Creator and director of Vermiglio, Maura Delpero. Thank you so much for being our guest here. This wonderful film. I'm really looking forward to questions we might have from our audience, and I'm going to come to you in a moment, but I do want to just get things started with a few questions I would like to ask Maura. But please be thinking of what you'd like to ask, because I'm sure we're going to have some good questions from all of you as well. First, could I ask about the sense of place here in the mountains, in the Dolomites, in this village? What did you want to say or make us think about with the way that the place informs the characters in their lives?
Yeah, it's true that it informs, because it wasn't just a landscape at all. I was born here in those mountains, so as some people say, it's nice that it's not a postcard, and it wouldn't have been possible, because for me it's not exotic at all. It's my places, and it's really home. But it's also about not just mountains, but being of the mountains, being mountain people. That's why also when the casting moment came, for me it was not a choice to go to Rome, where most of actors are, and pick up some nice boys and children, and then teach them the local dialect. And because it was not just the film is in dialect. Also, Italian people watch it with subtitles. It's a very specific regional dialect, but it's not just a matter of dialogue, of language. It's a matter of how you move when you talk in a certain way, and how you are a person who moves when what you see in front of you is a big mountain that remembers you that you're little. It's not the same way you move in the city, you move in the... So it was really the idea of having this specificity of these people, and at the same time it was the idea of a small village that could be a small village all over the world, with the same dynamics, with the same very few places that come again and again during the narration. So there's the church, there's the house, there's the bar. Now there's 5-6 places that come again and again, and also allowed me to go on with an elliptical narration that has changes. So you see the same place, but something has changed, and you understand that the story is going on. Same thing with the season, same thing with the bodies, the belly growings, and all this. All the language for me had to be elliptic and stand. The narration should come out of what you saw. That is what you always have seen, but it has changed through the season, through the fact that, for example, this first bed that you see at the very beginning of the film is a full bed, and then at the end of the film it's a completely empty bed. No, so it's the same places that change.
Excuse me. And I'm glad you talked about that sense of universality, and that the story could have potentially been taking place at a slightly different time. I'm curious about the 40s and World War II setting, and the evolution of writing the screenplay. Was it always going to be World War II, or did that evolve? Did that come in later in terms of choosing the appropriate period that you wanted to set the story?
The inspiration of the film has been the most private one could ever imagine, because it has to do with the death of my father. I came to LA to introduce Maternal and to a lot of other festivals, and my father had just passed away, and I was traveling all around the world trying not to think about it. And then the COVID came, and it asked me to stop. And by stopping, all this thing about my dad came out. And one night I had a dream. It was a beautiful dream about a little boy visiting me, a 6-year-old boy. It was my father. He resembled to a photo of him I knew when he was 6. And he was playing in his childhood's home in Vermiglio with his siblings, my aunts and uncles. And I began to write as a private way of overcoming this grief. But then I felt that there was something more there, and the images came more and more. And so in a moment I thought maybe there's a film here. But the time of the film, it was this inspirational dream that suggested, because my father was little when these years were there. But also, of course, when you structure a film, you really think, is it good that it's in those years? And I found that it was particularly interesting to place the film in those transitional moments between the war moment and the peace, because I think that it is a recent past, a past that is, of course, it's past, but it still dialogues with us. It's not an exotic past. It's really the day before yesterday. It's like you can still say that woman is the one who gave birth to my father. So it's still a relation. And I think that you can feel it overall in the female characters, that they are absolutely ancient and they belong to the codes of the epoch. That was a patriarchal society, but they are already willing to have an autodetermination. Of course, they cannot put in act because it's impossible. But you can feel, for example, Lucia, the main character, she begins really as an old-fashioned country girl, and through this tragedy and through the necessity of staying alive, she turns into a woman of our times, because she's a woman who says goodbye to her child to go to work and goes alone in the city. So it was really also, and she's kind of a metonym of this passage of time. I wanted to have a film that could kind of go from the past to the modern, from the village to the city, from the community to individuality, maybe individualism. So in a way, I think those years were interesting because they are really past and present. They can allow us to look at ourselves and our recent past and maybe thinking where we're going. If it had been more past, it's like, oh, look how the ancient Romans were living, and it's exotic. You like it, but it's not. It doesn't have to do with your life. I still think that it still has to do with my life. I still feel my grandmother inside me. Of course, if she could see me now, she wouldn't understand what I'm doing here. Like, what is this woman doing? Why is she not in a kitchen giving birth to 10 children? So in a way, it's really past, but at the same time, for me to be here with you, it meant dialogue with my inner grandmother and convincing me I could do it.
You touched upon with the visuals and the sense of place, not wanting that picture of postcard beauty, even though much of the imagery is incredibly beautiful and painterly, and the sense of compositions. Your cinematographer, Mikhail Krichman, Russian cinematographer who's worked with, I'm going to murder this guy's name, Andrei Zavagziev, on many of his films. Could you tell us a bit about what the two of you discussed in terms of what you wanted in terms of themes and approach for the film?
I was so happy that Mikhail wanted to be on board. He really loved the script. He felt the script, and now that I know him, I understand why he loved the film, because he's not a mountain person, but he could be. We exchanged references from the very beginning. We were not in the same country, so it was all Zooms and mails. And I sent him most of all pictures, paintings. There were not cinematographic references. There were most of all paintings and overall from Segantini, an Italian painter, the winter paintings of Segantini. And then I sent him Danish porcelains because Danish porcelains. I was thinking that color of the film were this white and blue, because Vermiglio means vermilion, which is a type of red, but I think the name of this village should have been light blue, not vermilion, because it's really so high that you really feel the sky on you, and there's always so much snow. So what we said with Mikhail at the beginning was there will be like a kind of desaturated basis on which we will just make stand out some primary colors, and that's it. And we shared this idea with the other art department, with costumes and scenography, and we worked on this also on the paint, on the walls of the house, everywhere, so that to have our world, a unique world. And we did some camera tests a couple of months before the shoot. We tried to shoot we made the difference between 60 millimeters and digital, and we found out that we could have a filmic effect through some lenses that are called super balta. So then in Paris they worked on the color, and there was a color scientist that was working with us during the process, before and during the shooting. But the main thing was that the paintings were the main references. The stillness of the camera, I was sure that it had to be like still. I prefer to shoot with very few plans. I don't do a lot of cover. Because it was really kind of this still world, and also this has to do with my narrative language. I'm always aiming to a very syncretic image. I prefer to arrive in an elliptic way to one image, and that's it. That's why I wanted the camera to be still. One image that could tell what maybe 2, 3, 4 plans could tell. So we were agreeing on this.